That walk-up music you just heard, it was Taylor Swift, and it's there for Petros Papadakis. Appreciate him joining us on Tuesday in the final hour of the Tuesday show, as he always does. Petros, how was your Labor Day? You do anything fun?
No, I don't do very many things, as you know. So I just kind of hung around and did the same stuff that I usually do, either at my parents' house or my house. And I'm sorry that I don't lead the exciting life. Although this was the very first Labor Day I've been home in, 15 years probably. Because usually I'm calling a football game, and this year there's no football games for me to call at all yet. So it was very strange. Like, I got stuck in traffic on Friday, and usually I'm pretty cognizant when it comes to that stuff about what days LA traffic is worse, and I realized that I didn't anticipate Friday Labor Day traffic because usually I'm out of town in a place like Stillwater or Ames or up at Stanford or just not here. So it was a little weird being at home, but I watched a lot of the college football and enjoyed a great deal of it.
Do you think, like I do, that every time there's a game played, like last night we watched BYU and Navy, and obviously to BYU's credit, they just took it to everybody on that Navy side, but it feels worse, I think, for Pac-12, Mountain West, the MAC. We were just talking with Jason Whitlock, who went to Ball State, and the Big Ten, that they're not playing, right? Because it becomes more difficult, I think, with every game that you watch. On Thursday, a couple of days, we're going to be talking about the Texans and the Chiefs playing. And then, obviously, you've also got the Big 12 and the ACC theoretically coming back this weekend. It's like every game that gets played, it feels more ludicrous that there's not games able to be played by the Pac-12 and the Big Ten in particular.
Yeah, well, I think I saw you tweet about this. Every time they kick one off, it proves that it can be done. And it can be done at a level with schools that have much less resources than the ones that a lot of us are used to watching.
Like I saw Eastern, yeah, exactly right. Eastern Kentucky and Marshall was the first one I think that kicked off on Saturday morning. And I'm sitting there like, if those guys can figure out a way to do it, then you can't make an argument to me that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 can't.
It's just a will to do it. I have done a lot of Conference USA games at the onset of Fox Sports 1. Yeah. We had that contract, and I visited a lot of these schools, and just like any other college situation, they're different than each other. They're not all exactly the same, but they are so much smaller, and they feel smaller, when you're up close and you look at the players and you see the shots down on the field. But what they do have right now is a passion and a will to play football, and they have the country's eyeballs on it too. And it's so interesting because I heard Larry Scott on with Dan Patrick the other day and talking about how our science is on the West Coast is just different than the science on
yes.
in the South, and just how the science varies. And it just amazes me that people on the West Coast, the University of Virginia, which is in the ACC, is one of the great medical schools in the country. They're playing football. It's not all this completely.
Duke is playing. Vanderbilt is playing. There are some pretty elite academic institutions east of the Mississippi that are managing to figure out a way to play.
It still feels, though, like a lot of us on the West Coast have fallen out of the Tower of Babel, and we're just not speaking the same language as everybody else. But the more games are kicked off, and of course these sports can be played. Sports have been played globally for months.
Yes.
And whether you think college football players should be paid or not, or that they're playing, they want to play and their sport generates a lot more money than a lot of sports that have been played globally for months. So the sports obviously can be played, and the more that they are, I think the more it pushes the Pac-12 and the Big Ten to make maybe a more measured sort of plan going forward that doesn't include, by the way, playing in January, Clay. That no one's going to do that because who wants to hold hands with the Pac-10 and Big 12 when everybody else is going right now?
No, I mean, I think you're 100% right. And also, I think some of the illogical nature of the decision-making is also factoring in here. For instance, I went and watched the Atlanta Braves play against the Washington Nationals over the weekend in Atlanta.
I saw that.
Took my kids, had an incredible time, but we had to watch the game from a hotel, looking out over the stadium because fans aren't allowed inside. But the Atlanta Falcons are going to have fans present. I believe Dub makes sure that I'm right about this. I know the University of Georgia is, and also Georgia Tech, right? Every sport and every fan base is a little bit different. But when you actually consider that, I'm sitting there saying, why in the world couldn't the Braves be allowed to have fans if we can go watch football games outdoors? Why can't we go watch baseball games outdoors? And I know you've been talking about this from the get-go with the fact that you want fans to be able to watch in Dodger Stadium and get back to some form of normalcy there. But look, I mean, the Atlanta Falcons are going to have a certain number of fans that are present in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And if they're going to do it at Georgia Tech and they're going to do it at Georgia and they're going to do it with the Falcons, seems to me like the Braves could play. But I think what you're hitting at is all these different parts of the country having different rules doesn't make a lot of sense. I saw even where I believe like in the San Diego area, some movie theaters have opened back up, but the LA area, they haven't. And people are driving across state and county lines to go watch movies. Like the virus doesn't care about the little lines that we draw on the map that distinguish between one county and another or one state and another. It's really kind of all need the same rules.
My family, like everybody in my family, I didn't get invited, but they're all going down to La Jolla, like my dad, my uncle, my sister, my cousins, everybody's kids. And I was like, La Jolla, really? You guys are going to a hotel? They're like, yeah, we're all going next weekend. I was like, well, really? You can go down there? Yeah. And I was like, then they're going to Red Tractons, which is a famous old restaurant by the track where I saw Mike Ditka once when I was a kid throw a cigar at somebody. And they were like, no, San Diego's open. I was like, San Diego's open? What are you talking about? I mean, you're talking about fans inside a stadium, and here in L.A., it's like, I mean, I look like I'm in freaking Mother Love Bone, the band. I mean, my hair is out of control. I don't even know where to get a haircut right now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is kind of funny, and we are living in different worlds. I mean, this weekend, people in L.A. just didn't go outside because it was like 120 degrees.
Yeah, I heard.
But I'm sure people were out at the beach and doing their thing and running around and taking advantage of all the incongruities like always. I mean, look at us here in L.A., Clay. We're going to have the NFL start, and everybody's going to freak out, and all we have to sell is this new stadium that no one's allowed to go to, like for the foreseeable future ever, the SoFi Stadium. We can't even put people in the suites there.
Speaking of L.A., the Clippers got the win last night to go up 2-1. How would you assess right now the L.A. sports market in general with the Lakers and the Clippers? Lakers tied up. Clippers are up 2-1. You've got the Dodgers that are on absolute fire, right? I mean, the best record in baseball right now. And now you've got the Chargers returning. Haven't heard a lot about – first of all, it's hard to know because we haven't really seen NFL preseason, but how exactly – has Justin Herbert looked, like what's going to happen there versus Tyrod Taylor? Meanwhile, the Rams, obviously disappointing season after losing in the Super Bowl. How would you assess the overall interest level so far as you can tell with all those different sports theoretically about to compete against each other?
Well, number one is USC doesn't want to play football, so we get that out of the way.
We can take UCLA and USC out of the mix because the Pac-12 is not going on.
UCLA is probably more willing to play than my alma mater.
Do you think that's true?
I mean, USC is just a lot better of a program when they don't have to play games. They can do their internet hype videos and have recruiting parties and high-five each other and wear their cool special political backpacks and really just the only thing is they're not fulfilling the promise of the scholarship to feature these guys as players. So eventually that, I imagine, would become a problem. As far as the Chargers and Rams go, I think Hard Knocks is one of the lowest rated in its history.
Nobody cared. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's not.
But I wonder how much of that was just, we make fun of the preseason every year, but even you, who has to hate the preseason as much or more than me because so much of it seems artificial.
I like it. I like the guys I like it because it gives guys opportunity to feature themselves.
That's a good point.
And to make a team or to put tape together to make another team. But yeah, without the games, it's a little.
It gives us storylines. Go to at least talk about, hey, how good has this rookie looked? What do we expect out of these new free agent additions? There's at least some semblance of an idea about how they might be doing, whereas now it feels like we're just, boom, going to have a kickoff game. And I know that's what usually happens in college football, but college football is a little bit different because we talk about recruiting. I mean, if you have a favorite team, you're following pretty aggressively a lot of details that otherwise might be overlooked, whereas the NFL, there's this 1 month long preseason that really makes people aware that, hey, this is the season, it's finally going to be here, even if it's way too long. It does feel a bit abrupt that all of a sudden we're going to have games in 2 days.
One thing that has become clear with the Hard Knocks that I kind of already knew just from what we do for work is that Anthony Lynn is a really stand-up guy and a very likable coach. And he comes off very well here. Now, what does that mean? He's on a one-year deal, and if the Chargers don't have a great year, he's probably going to get fired. But he came off pretty well. But Justin Herbert is not going to start, and they're going to have a hard time making a personality out of Jared Goff. I think people have given up on that. And Aaron Donald is excellent, but he's a defensive lineman. And the thing they really have to sell is the stadium this year, and there's going to be nobody in there. Now, as far as the Dodgers go, they are on fire, like you said, and people have stars in their eyes and championship aspirations. And we had a guy on who just got traded, actually, Ross Stripling, who's a pitcher who got traded to Toronto, they're homeless, so he's in Buffalo. But he did say about the season, it's going to be over in a blink of an eye. And poor guy got traded, and next thing you know, the season's almost over. So it is going fast, and that will be interesting. And the Lakers and Clippers are inching toward each other, and we'll see. I mean, at least as a media, we're going to get excited about that. I don't know how excited the city will actually be because we've talked about this before. The Staples Center is kind of the star when it comes to L.A. basketball, like the Forum was in the 80s, as the backdrop for Magic and Kareem and all that. So without that, it'll be fun to see how people react. But Lakers-Clippers with LeBron and Kawhi out there should be pretty spectacular if it happens.
If it does end up happening, the Lakers-Clippers, and it's going head-to-head with the Dodgers potentially, maybe in the postseason. We're getting close to that, obviously, and also with the NFL. How do you think it plays? Because I'm kind of intrigued by this in general. We've never really seen the NFL compete in any way with the NBA on, like a playoff basis. Obviously, we see in the games in October and November, the NFL just dominates and destroys the NBA. Do you think it will cut through the noise in a big way in LA? Certainly it wouldn't in the same way if that was taking place in May. But to what extent is this going to grab the attention of LA? And I guess also if everybody can't leave their house, maybe people are watching more sports in LA than usual.
Well, the national media, and, that's one of the things I find really interesting about college coverage. And, I realize that most college football is played, outside of big cities. I realized that a long time ago. That's part of the reason for the tribalism of the sport. And a lot of the voices that talk about college football, very loud ones, come from the West Coast, where college football is really not that important. So a lot of it sounds very tone deaf right now because guys are writing about stuff that their constituents probably don't really want to read. The same thing is kind of about the NBA. How excited are people going to be about it? I mean, I can tell you, with the Dodgers are anywhere near the World Series, everybody in this town, because we're mostly a Latino town, is going to be en fuego, so to speak. But when it comes to the Lakers and Clippers, almost with the bubble, it will feel like the media will tell us how excited we are about it and what a big deal it is, and whether or not it actually is without the crowd there and the whole travel with L.A. and Rihanna there on the sideline, that remains to be seen.
What's the over? And we're talking to Petros Papadakis, AM 570 LA Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at the Old P. You can also listen to him, like I said, every afternoon on the radio there.
AM 570 LA Sports, Clay.
That's where I hit it right. Didn't I get it right?
Yeah, you got it.
And so, what do you miss the most? You said you haven't gotten a haircut in a long time. I mean, it's kind of wild to me because I'm going to be honest, and in Nashville, and even in the surrounding communities, I would say all over the South. I was in Atlanta. Like, it really doesn't feel that much different than normal. And for the most part, I mean, you can look around and see people wearing masks every now and then, and I guess that would be abnormal if you suddenly flashed forward, like a year or something like that. You'd be like, oh my God, what in the world's going on? But it feels normal. I don't get the sense that LA feels normal yet.
No, what I miss is, I mean, not to be sappy, is, I miss people being able to make a living the way that they're supposed to be able to. And just personally and selfishly, I miss calling college football. I mean,
yeah.
This is going to be the first season of my life since I was looking through a face mask that I wasn't really part of college football game broadcasts. And that's hard, I mean, that's an ego blow and kind of hard on my identity. It's also an opportunity to be home for the fall for the first time in my life and be around my family, which is cool. But, I mean, here in Los Angeles, I miss the fact that our high school kids, I mean, our kids aren't in school.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for these regulations to lift so our kids can go back to school. And every time we meet some goal, they move the goalpost back further. So it feels like a Joseph Heller novel, honestly, here in Los Angeles. I mean, it really feels like we're in a catch-22, and it keeps circling the drain. So there's a lot here that I think a lot of your listeners can't relate to. And there's a lot when the people in California, I think, hear your show and hear about all the stuff that you're up to on a daily basis, that it's hard for them to wrap their head around.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've been to movies 3 weeks in a row. I mean, we went and hung out down in Atlanta. I'm living my life pretty much in a normal way. My kids are back in school, all of them.
Well, you're also a man
in person.
Of means.
I mean, no, but I mean, like, most people in my state and in my area, our kids are back in school, and so I'm really kind of fascinated by how much of a difference there is out there. And you mentioned the things are different for you for college football. I mean, yesterday I took off on, Labor Day. I haven't taken Labor Day off since I started doing radio, because usually that's the weekend when college football starts. And there's so many games going on that I want to be there for that Monday to talk about all the different games that happen. We would have had USC, Alabama, among other things that would have been taking place, and we would have had a ton of different reaction because we don't have that many weekends in the grand scheme of things to react to football games. Instead, there were relatively few of them, and so I said, hey, let's take the kids out of town. Let's go try to watch the Braves right before things kind of begin in earnest. But it's still kind of wacky to me, too. I don't call games like you, but it just felt a little bit abnormal and strange in general.
Yes, but we will persevere as long as there's radio, Clay, the last bastion of communication in the world. Thank God for Orson Welles.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, as we roll into the rest of the week, how excited are you for the return of the NFL? Last question for you. Will you make it a point to make sure that you watch on Thursday night, or will you just be like, it still doesn't feel 100% like football season because you're not playing high school there? Like, what's your plan?
I mean, I'll watch the NFL and react to the NFL. My partner works for the NFL. I mean, NFL football has always been kind of a marvel to me and always sometimes a little boring because it's pretty much the same thing, place in and place out. There's not a lot of room out there on the field because of where the hash marks are. So the players are absolutely almost flawless. I mean, they are excellent. The level of football is really high, but that also leads to less big plays, less fun, because there's a lack of mistakes, and a 30-year-old man who is 6 or 7 years in is a lot less apt to make mistakes than a college kid who's got his head spinning around in his first experience out there. So that's one of the things I really like about college, that it just doesn't exist in the NFL. I mean, if you recognize football as if you watch it like an analyst, which I guess technically I am, it just seems just really perfect to me, the NFL. And it's almost kind of like going to a casino and never losing, which isn't as fun.
Yes.
I like it a little more dirty. But I'll watch it. Usually I watch that opening night to see how bad that second broadcast team is, But this year it's Kirk Herbstreit and Fowler doing it. So the thing that's always funny is usually they put two people together who've never called a game before. Yes. And that's an issue. But those guys have called a bunch of games, so that should be fine and seamless. And I'm sure there'll be a bunch of storylines and a bunch of fun stuff. But to me, it's just so much more packaged and so much more corporate and pretty than the product that we have with college football. And there's a lot of people that like it a lot more, and there's some people that don't. But I'm more of a college guy always.
Love them both, but I'd
rather watch a Conference USA, honestly, and the Sun Belt than the NFL.
We will talk to you next week, Petros. Appreciate you getting up early as always with us, and we'll see what continues to happen. I hope you can get a haircut soon.
Bye.
This is Outkick the Coverage with Clay Travis.